My father was a foreign student, born and raised in a small village in Kenya. He grew up herding goats, went to school in a tin roof shack. My father met my mother. She was born in a town on the other side of the world, in Kansas.
Barack Obama's compelling life story helped catapult him onto the national stage with his speech to the Democratic National Convention. The story begins in a small village in southeast Kenya, home to the Obama family. Obama's father, Barack Obama Sr., was among the first generation of Africans to receive a scholarship to study in the United States and the first to be accepted at the University of Hawaii. There he met a fellow student who had recently moved to Hawaii with her parents. Ann Dunham had spent her early years in tiny Augusta, Kansas. That Kansas front porch was a long way from Hawaii, where racial attitudes were more relaxed. Obama's great-uncle remembers being somewhat taken aback with the news that his niece had married a black man from Kenya. What did you think when you found out she'd married a Kenyan?
I wondered what was going on out there in Hawaii.
Barack, known then as Barry, spent his early years on the beaches and playgrounds of Hawaii. But life changed dramatically when he was only 2, and his father abandoned his wife and son to accept a scholarship to Harvard. After completing his PhD, Obama Sr. returned to Kenya. Barry saw his father only one more time when he was 10, and his father returned to Hawaii for a visit. 11 years later, Barack Obama Sr. was killed in an automobile accident in Kenya. Growing up without his father had a major impact on Obama.
I think that shaped him, because when you don't have that father figure, you're always struggling to figure out what it means to be a man if you don't have someone that is yours to emulate. So I think that his pursuit was finding that piece of himself that would answer some of those questions, probably subconsciously make that father that he didn't know proud of him.
Though at age 6, young Barry did gain a stepfather. His mother met and married a Muslim graduate student at the University of Hawaii who was from Indonesia. Barry and his mother moved to Indonesia, and soon a half-sister was born. Indonesia's poverty and its politics, which had victimized his stepfather, left a lasting impression on the young biracial child trying to fit into yet another culture. It was in Indonesia where Barry first saw magazine stories and ads about blacks bleaching their skin, a painful moment in his exploration of his own racial identity.
And I remember coming across this magazine that talked about blacks who had used skin bleaching agents to make themselves lighter. And I think that was when I first realized not only that I was African American, which I think I had a pretty good sense of at that point, but also that there were all sorts of implications to race, and there were power relationships in race. And I couldn't articulate all that at the time, but I remember feeling shocked by that.
Life changed again when Barry was sent back to Hawaii at age 10 to attend the prestigious Punahou School. Unhappy with the schools in Indonesia, his mother wanted him to get the best education possible. During most of his high school years, his mother remained in Indonesia, and Barry lived with his grandparents. Academically, Punahou was excellent, but even though the student body was diverse, he was often the only black student in his class. In his autobiography, written at age 33, he describes his struggles to define himself. I was engaged in a fitful interior struggle. I was trying to raise myself to be a black man in America, and beyond the given of my appearance, no one around me seemed to know exactly what that meant. The restless teenager spent hours on the basketball court, where he says he found his closest white and black friends. He tried marijuana and later cocaine.
If he had been the same kid growing up on the south side of Chicago, I think his outcomes might be a bit different. But there wasn't a lot of trouble to get in Hawaii. To hear his friends and he and his friends talk about what they did, is like you could screw up in Hawaii and still be okay.
His great-uncle says he's not surprised to learn of his nephew's identity struggles.
He wasn't raised black because he was raised in a white family and raised as if he were a white boy. And I'm sure that caused all kinds of conflicts in his mind. I think he came out of it well, and perhaps even gives him an insight into American society that not many blacks or whites have.
Thank you. What caused him to struggle as an adolescent has now become an important political asset and part of his political identity. Were you essentially raised, though, as a white child?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was raised as an Indonesian child and as a Hawaiian child and as a black and white child. And so, I think that part of what I benefit from is a multiplicity of cultures that all fed me.
Young Barry pulled his life together, graduated from Punahou, and accepted a scholarship to the mostly white Occidental College in Los Angeles. But he was dissatisfied and transferred to Columbia University in New York City his junior year, hoping to find more black students or at least a broader black community. While at Columbia, he began using his given name, Barack, which means the blessings of God. Armed with his degree from Columbia, Obama first worked in a financial consulting firm in Manhattan. But a year later, he opted for a far less lucrative community organizing job in Chicago. While working for social change in Chicago's public housing, Obama began to find a place for himself in the African American community. Area churches and their pastors, both black and white, were an important part of his work.
He basically invited us in to sit down and said, look, here you have an issue that's important in your neighborhood, and you're an African American pastor. But here's a pastor who sits right on the other side of your neighborhood who has the same issues. And he just happens to be white. But the issues are the same. So it makes sense to sit down and talk about those issues collectively.
Those early days of organizing produced a still existing group, the Developing Communities Project, and fueled Obama's interest in a political career.
He saw some of these stubborn, intractable problems that were plaguing neighborhoods and holding people back, and he wanted to do something about it, saw public life as the best way.
But before he went on to law school and politics, he traveled to Kenya to meet the side of his family he had never known. His father had died 6 years earlier, but he spent time with his grandmother in the small village his father had called home. Years later, Obama's grandmother proudly shows off pictures of her now famous grandson.
He's just like his father, who loved people. He used to draw out a crowd when he came home.
The month in Kenya with his father's side of the family proved to be critical for Obama.
Until I had gone back and sat at his grave and understood the struggles that he had gone through and his father's struggles, it gave me a sense that the work I was doing was directly connected to my own family and their own struggles, and I think that helped to unify my outward self with my inward self in an important way.
So it was a young man more at ease with himself and his identity, and clearer about his goals, who arrived on the Harvard campus in 1988. Even among the highly talented and competitive law school students, Obama stood out.
Of all the people that I've encountered as students, thousands in my 33 years, I don't think I've encountered anyone with greater combination of heart, charisma, brilliance, and potential than Barack Obama.
His professors say Obama went after everything Harvard has to offer. He immersed himself in the study of the law. He became involved in the Black Student Union, and he was elected president of the Harvard Law Review. He was the first African-American editor of the Law Review, the most prestigious and widely read law journal in the country.
Being president of the Harvard Law Review is at least a 40-hour-a-week job. Now, this is in addition to people who are full-time students, and Barack did this all with a kind of poise and equanimity that was really quite remarkable. He was working very hard, but you know, the old adage, never let him see you sweat, most people never saw him sweat.
The Law Review presidency brought Obama his first national publicity and could have been his ticket to a Supreme Court clerkship or a high-paying job at a prestigious downtown law firm. Instead, he chose a small Chicago law firm housed in a North Side brownstone. The choice surprised and delighted law firm partner Judson Miner, who had made the recruiting call to Harvard.
A young lady answered the telephone, and I think I mispronounced Barack's name, and so she quickly corrected me and said, "This must be a recruitment call," and I said, "Well, I guess, yes it is." And she said, "Well, I can put your name on the list, and I think you're 743rd.
Why do you think he came to your law firm?
Well, I think we did what he was interested in doing. He was interested in civil rights, he was interested in economic development in the minority community, and we do a lot of both.
Obama made a choice in his personal life as well. He met and married Marian Robinson, who had grown up on Chicago's South Side and had gone to Princeton and Harvard Law School, graduating 3 years before Obama. They met when she was assigned to recruit him to join one of the city's top law firms, Sidley and Austin.
The firm is abuzz about this brilliant young African-American male who everybody's trying to recruit. And I am always a cynic. I was a skeptic then, and my view was, I'm sure that this is just a black man who can talk straight, and that's why people love him. But I'm like, let me be the judge of whether he's great. So I was skeptical, and then I found out that he grew up in Hawaii, and I thought, okay, he's nuts. He's got to be nuts. I mean, what normal black people grow up in Hawaii?
But her skepticism soon faded.
I mean, we just clicked. We laughed about the same things. He was cynical in a way that was not jaded, but funny. He had a great sense of humor. He didn't take himself too seriously. But I was impressed with just what people are impressed with, is how did this young man with this strange background turn out to be such an interesting surprise.
Though Michelle Obama's mother was a little worried about the mixed heritage of her future son-in-law.
A little bit. That didn't concern me as much as had he been completely white. And I guess that I worry about races mixing because of the difficulty. Not for so much for prejudice or anything. It's just very hard.
Today, Marian Robinson dotes on her 2 young grandchildren. And Obama says it is his wife and his daughters that help keep his priorities straight.
They constantly remind me that I'm just one person, and hopefully I can make a contribution, but what's significant is that continuing legacy that we pass on to the next generation.
Obama's 2 young daughters have had to share their father with politics from the time they were born. He was first elected to the Illinois State Senate in 1996. And it wasn't long before he was making an impact, says Senate President Emil Jones.
He had the ability to talk with all those on the who were opposition to legislation, but he was able to do it in such a manner that he was not dogmatic in his approach, and pretty soon everyone began to respect him more.
But 4 years later, when Obama challenged popular incumbent Bobby Rush for his congressional seat, many thought Obama was pushing too hard, too fast. He lost, and some in the black community questioned whether his mixed heritage, lack of Chicago roots, and Harvard law degree meant he was too elitist or not black enough to represent the predominantly African American district. It is a charge that infuriates his wife.
I'm as black as it gets. I was born on the South Side. I come from an obviously black family. We weren't rich, you know. I put my blackness up against anybody's blackness in the state, okay? And Barack is a black man. And he's done more in terms of meeting his commitments and sticking his neck out for this community than many people who criticize him. And I can say that because I'm black.
The charge faded when Obama captured an astonishing 53% of the vote in a 7-person field in the Senate Democratic primary, winning the black vote overwhelmingly, but also winning in white ethnic wards, in the collar counties, and breaking even or winning precincts downstate. Axelrod attributes Obama's success in part to his ability to connect with people from all backgrounds.
His father was from Kenya and is black, and his mother was white and from Kansas. His sister's Indonesian. I think she's married to someone who's Chinese. Yeah. He's like a bigot's worst nightmare. I mean, he's someone who's comfortable wherever he goes, and that part of that is having gone through the struggle of figuring out who he is, of really struggling with this issue of race and ethnicity in our society. I think it's made him a really universal kind of figure who people respond to.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do.
That positive response to Obama has fueled speculation that at some point he will be on a national ticket.
The fact that he has touched people in the way he has, and that people really believe that this is possible, maybe not just possible, but probable, says an awful lot about him, but it also says something positive and hopeful about us.
Obama brushes all such speculation aside and focuses on November.
Dr. King once said, he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. But it doesn't bend on its own. It bends because we help bend it that way. It bends because you're going to get folks registered, and you're going to go to the polls, and we're going to have a whole Democratic slate elected, and you're going to have a new United States Senator, and his name is going to be Barack Obama. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you guys. Thank you.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Elizabeth Brackett.